So dimensioning, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we're on the dimensioning layer. If you don't have a dimensioning layer, you need to create one. So obviously we're going to go to Layer Properties, up to New Layer. I just call it Dims, and I'm going to set it to a nice bright color so we can see it. Once I've done that, I'll make that the current layer by double-clicking on it and close the Layer Property box. You can see that I'm on the dimensioning layer. The second thing I'm going to do is go up to Annotate on the top menus. So instead of Home and Insert, we'll go to Annotate. And up here, we're going to see our dimensioning style. And we have options here for doing a number of different things to our dimensions. We're going to hit the little arrow down in the bottom right corner. When you hover over, it says Dimension Style. When we click on that, it pops up a style manager for our dimensions. Now, we did this back when we set up our drawing, but you need to double check it. Otherwise, your dimensions aren't going to show up properly. We're going to go to Modify, and up pops this dialog box. And we're going to change a couple things. Number one, we're going to go to Primary Units, and we're going to set our primary units, if they're not already set, to architectural. And as we said, we're going to be dimensioning to a precision that our house is going to be built with, which is, we said, 1/8 of an inch. So I'll hit the precision, pull it down, and set it to 1/8 of an inch. I'll also go to Symbols and Arrows. And for our arrowheads, I want to make sure that it's chosen, or I've chosen, the architectural tick. So it's going to change the first and second. I'm not too concerned about a leader. I'm going to leave that as an arrow. But the first and second arrowheads will be architectural ticks. So one of the things with architectural drafting is oftentimes there's a lot of dimensions. So to simplify it, back in the day, instead of drawing a whole bunch of arrows, they just used a small tick at the end of the line as basically the arrow. Once that's all completed, and we've modified our dimensioning style, we're going to press OK, and then close that dialog box. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here at the front corner. I'm going to start on the bottom right-hand side, the front of the house, and work my way back. So it's important to kind of keep an eye on this. I'm going to go to Dimension, and I'm going to dimension from here until the very first thing that I come upon that's either an interior wall, like there, a window, or a door. So I've come up here to this window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my object snap is turned on, and I'm going to snap to the endpoint. Just going to make sure the proper object snaps are turned on. And so I'm going to snap to the center of my window. Now I'm going to bring my dimension out so it's just outside of my roof overhang. I don't want it way out here, just outside of the roof overhang. Then I'm going to go from the center of the window to the next thing I see, which for me is an interior partition wall. I'm going to decide to dimension either to the bottom, the center, or the top of the wall. I don't care what you do as long as it's consistent throughout your drawing. So on both sides, if I choose the bottom of the partition wall, then I'm going to choose the bottom of all of the partition walls as I go up both sides. The exception will be the outside corners of the house. So I'm going to choose the bottom. So I'll click there. You don't want to end up with what's called an aligned dimension. So that's what I have right now. It's aligning to the 2 points, and it's not coming straight across. So what I need to do is come up to basically the dimensioning, and I'm going to choose a linear dimension. Choose that point, and now it comes straight off of those 2 points. I'll snap to the architectural tick from my first dimension. So that gets put in place. I'll next go with another linear dimension. I'm going to go from the same spot to the center of this window. So I'm going to choose the midpoint. This is a horizontal, no, vertical sliding window, so I don't have a center line. So I make sure I've got midpoint turned on for my object snaps. And again, I'll come and I'll snap to the architectural tick from the previous dimension. I'll right-click, repeat linear dimension, center of the window, bottom of the next partition wall for me. And I'll work my way all the way down the side of the house. I have basically a fireplace and then another corner of a room, so a partition wall again, so I'll dimension to it. Right-click, repeat dimension, off to a set of stairs, which would be a wall if I had finished them, and I'll repeat my dimension, and this time it's to the corner of the house. So instead of the bottom or the inside, I'm going to be dimensioning to the outside edge of that wall. Snapping again so that they're all in line. Now that's this one side. I also have over here a few other components that would be along the right-hand side. So for these, I'm going to right-click, repeat linear dimension, and I'm just going to dimension them here closer to where the dimension is. So because the front of my house kind of notches out, I'm going to place one there, and I'm going to need to place one here as well to indicate how far back the entrance is stepped from the garage. Now I am also going to place an overall dimension down the side. Now for me, I've got these two little pieces that stick out the front, so I'm not really super concerned about dimensioning down the side and including those two things. So I'm just going to come down the side. Again, I'm not bringing my dimension way out here. I'm bringing it in so it's just a second layer of dimensions, and there's my overall length of 54 feet from the front corner to the back corner. Now I can do some simple math and add these other 6 feet to get an understanding of basically the total length of the house. I don't want to extend it across here and have a bunch of dimensions running across that really confuse things. So I'm going to go across the front of my house now so you can see what I'm going to do with a door. Again, I'm going to right-click and repeat linear dimension here to the center of my window, again, just outside the roof overhang. I'll repeat center of window. I'm not going to worry about the closet. I'm going to go to this corner of the front of the house, again, snapping in line with the other dimension. Next, I'm going to go from here to the center of my doors. Again, I'm going to snap to the other dimension. And then I'm going to repeat my linear dimension from the center of the doors to this top edge. And this dimension I'm going to bring out here, again, just outside of the roof overhang. I'll repeat my dimension, and this time I'm just going to go to the center of the garage door area because I have two garage doors. I'm just going to go to the center. We can figure out and measure this little post here and deal with that using a scale. And I'll go there to the outside edge. One last dimension is going to be the overall at the front. And I'm going to go right across the whole house, and I'm going to drag that out from the furthest dimension that I have. So I'm not going to leave it in here. I'm going to bring it all the way out in front. This overall dimension needs to be 40 feet or less, if you recall, in order for your house to fit on our property. Mine's exactly 40 feet. So next we're going to go down the left-hand side, then we will go down the back, and we'll do the same thing. The last step is adding any dimensions inside the house that aren't covered by dimensions on the outside of the house. So for instance, I have this wall. I know where it is located from the outside edge because I've got these two dimensions here. Now this wall is also this wall. So I actually don't need to include a dimension from here to here on the inside of my house, because this wall runs all the way down to the front where it's been dimensioned. Similarly, this wall runs all the way down straight across. So what you need to do is kind of decide, do I have to dimension anything that's inside the house? And really there could only be a couple dimensions that you need to add. For me, it's going to be this powder room. I don't know what width that is. It's inside this room. I know how wide it is because I'd have dimensions on the outside here, but I don't know what the size of it is. Similarly, my laundry room's kind of in the middle here. And so I would repeat a dimension here indicating the size of my laundry room. Same would be necessary for my utility room. Come across here, similar thing, just with regards to the setback for the washroom. But really, that's about it for me with regards to dimensioning things inside this house. We need a dimension on this room, and that's about it. Careful with your dimensions. Don't let them snap together like that. Make sure they are a nice distance apart. But typically, on the inside of the house, once you've dimensioned all the way around the perimeter, there's going to be very few dimensions that you need on the inside. And for me, this is it. It's basically these 5 dimensions, just because things are not carried from the outside. I'm not going to dimension this closet. This can be measured. It's not a make or break situation. I know the dimension across from this wall from the outside, and I know the end of the garage from the outside. So really, it's just a matter of setting the closet depth to 2 feet or 2 feet 6 inches, and then whatever's left is your powder room. And that can be measured off the plans really easily. It's not a crucial dimension. And literally, I'm going to come down this side, and once I've done all of my dimensions, down the left side, I'll do my overall, and then I'm going to do the same thing at the back. Work my way across to the walls, doors, and windows, and then give the overall on the outside. So the overall is given on all 4 sides. Any questions about dimensions? Now, if your numbers are not the right size, remember we set up our dim scale back at the beginning when we set up our drawing. So if your dimensions are really tiny, what you need to do is make sure you're not in a command type D-I-M-S-C-A-L-E for dim scale, all one word, press enter, and set it appropriately. It's probably going to be between somewhere around 25 to 40 as far as the scale factor. It's going to be the same scale factor that you used for your LT scale, for your line type scale, so your hidden lines showed up properly. So don't go changing any of the style. You can change settings in there, but don't. Just use dim scale to change it. And that way, all of the things associated with a dimension are scaled up. So our extension line gap, our architectural tick, the text, the space for our text, and so on and so forth. And that's dimensioning. Make sure it's on the proper layer, and that's all there is to it.